Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving deep again, looking exclusively at the latest reports from right here at Addis Fortune. We're trying to make sense of this, this real tension in Ethiopia's economy right now.
It really is a tale of two economies, isn't it? You've got the day-to-day struggle, people wrestling with inflation, farmers hit by climate shocks, professionals battling new regulations. That's one side.
And the other.
And then you have the big picture stuff. Huge ambitions, state-led reforms, these major global partnerships in aviation, even launching a brand new capital market from, well, almost scratch.
So our mission today is to unpack those contrasting stories. We want to give you the key takeaways, the sort of nuggets of insight so you understand not just what's happening, but, the deeper implications, the challenges and the opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think we have to start with the most immediate pain point for, well, pretty much everyone, especially in the cities. Inflation. We're talking about the burr, its purchasing power just collapsing, and the tomato. It's become the perfect symbol.
Yeah, the humble tomato, it's kind of the bitter yardstick for this moment. Our sources show a kilo, just 1 kilo, which is essential for so many meals, is now fetching anywhere from 85 to 140 burr.
Which is staggering.
It really is. That price has basically tripled in just 1 year.
And you see the human impact immediately. There's this anecdote about Samira Adam. Not long ago, she'd buy, 5, maybe 7 kilos for her family?
Right.
Now, she can barely afford 2. She's actually resorting to blending things like green chilies or cabbage just to make a substitute for sauce.
Wow. That tells you everything about how drastically people are changing their habits just to afford basic food.
And the root cause. Well, it's largely about imports and the exchange rate.
The dollar pressure, yeah. Fertilizer, pesticide, seeds, all vital for farming. They're priced in hard currency.
Yeah.
And as the burr has slid against the dollar.
Which it has, dramatically. From maybe 58 burr to the dollar not that long ago, up to, 140 now?
Exactly. So the landed cost of those essential inputs has doubled, sometimes tripled.
Think about what that means for a farmer. Just planting a small plot, say a quarter hectare, needs huge upfront cash now. Winter hardy seeds alone, that's like 28,000 burr before you even plow the field.
And chemicals.
Chemicals jumped from maybe 3,000 burr to 8,000 burr, almost overnight seems like. Plus, fuel for irrigation pumps, diesel is running at 126 burr a liter. The initial costs are just huge.
But here's the twist, the sort of paradox we found in the data. Domestic supply, especially for tomatoes, is actually projected to fall below demand by 2026. Yet in 2023, Ethiopia exported over 22,800 tons of fresh tomatoes. That brought in $11.4 million, mainly going to places like Somalia and Djibouti.
And that right there is the core tension laid bare. It shows how powerful the need for foreign exchange, that dollar signal, really is in the economy.
So powerful it overrides domestic needs.
It seems so. Getting hard currency, even for basic staples like tomatoes, is being prioritized, maybe systemically, over ensuring enough supply for local, especially urban, consumers. The export drive is directly making the squeeze worse at home.
Okay, sticking with earning dollars, let's pivot to horticulture. After coffee and gold, it's a massive foreign exchange earner. Crucial sector.
Absolutely crucial.
But vulnerable. Our sources really highlighted this after that devastating storm back in early August near Bishoftu. Shows the risks of climate change and maybe not enough preparation.
Oh, that was a serious event. A 4-hour storm, heavy rain, strong winds, hail. It hit 10 big commercial farms, just 45 kilometers or so east of Addis.
And the damage.
Immediate and widespread. Almost 40% of the cultivated land there, about 100 hectares, was basically rendered useless.
We saw some specific high-value losses mentioned too. Joytech fell it.
Yeah, Joytech lost 15 hectares of crops, but also, crucially, their state-of-the-art tissue culture lab. That's damage estimated around 115 million burr.
Huge. And Vexpro.
Vegpro lost over 95% of their 26-hectare farm. Just wiped out.
So what's the total estimated impact?
Well, the number being floated is around $102 million in lost potential export earnings just for the 2025-26 period. But honestly, the bigger cost might be reputational. Losing $102 million is bad, obviously. But losing trust with international buyers, the Dutch, the Saudis, the UK, because you can't guarantee supply or quality, that damages the entire sector's future prospects.
And there was some criticism, wasn't there, about maybe a failure to warn people properly?
Yes, specifically from hydrometeorologist Mamok Hassain. He pointed fingers at the Ethiopian Meteorological Institute, saying they didn't provide adequate early warnings about those powerful seasonal winds, the Somali low-level jet, it's called, which caused a lot of the destruction.
So a failure of foresight making a natural disaster even worse.
Seems that way.
Okay. So sometimes the friction comes from nature, sometimes from deliberate policy choices.
Let's shift now to regulatory battles. The government's pushing modernization hard, but it's causing sparks to fly, especially in transport and with professionals like lawyers.
Right. Let's start with transport. Big changes there. The government's trying to clean up the vehicle licensing mess. They're cutting down from, believe it or not, 17 different colored number plates. 17.
Yeah.
Seriously. That sounds like a collector's nightmare, not a system.
Chuckles, exactly. Shows the complexity they're dealing with. They want to bring it down to just 3 standard colors. Main goals: curb fraud, modernize.
Okay. Simplification makes sense. But the friction point is...
It's the new fee structure that goes with it. It's tiered, and it very deliberately favors electric vehicles, EVs, and public transport. They get subsidies.
While regular fuel cars.
Especially older ones face much higher costs. The justification is, encouraging green transport, plus maybe getting some extra revenue from personalized plates.
But not everyone's buying that justification. We saw sharp criticism from transport expert Abi Alim.
Yes, he basically called it politically motivated and poorly planned. His main point was that Ethiopia's real transport problem isn't its contribution to global emissions, it's about domestic efficiency, roads, infrastructure.
He argued the country just isn't ready for a mass EV switch.
Exactly. Not enough charging stations, inadequate service infrastructure, even issues with insurance coverage for EVs. He thinks policy should focus on actual emissions testing for cars, not just penalizing them based on their model year. Punishing well-maintained older cars, he says, is unfair and misses the point.
That argument for practical standards versus blanket rules definitely has weight. Okay, let's move to the second big regulatory fight. Lawyers versus the Ministry of Finance over VET.
This is a classic clash. You've got the Federal Bar Association, about 500 members strong, apparently ready to sue the ministry.
Over what, exactly?
A new directive that says all professionals must register for VAT. The key thing is, it applies regardless of whether they meet the usual 2 million birr annual income threshold for VAT registration.
So even smaller law practices that were below that threshold now have to register.
Correct. And that means new burdens, hiring accountants, setting up auditing systems, things they didn't need before.
And the lawyer's argument against this, it seemed quite fundamental.
It is. Lawyer Meseret Ailu put it very clearly. She argued the legal profession's primary role is to serve the justice system. It's not, in her words, a profit-making business or a commercial activity as defined by the Commercial Code.
So forcing them into the standard VAT system mischaracterizes their whole purpose.
That's the core of their legal argument. They say the directive contradicts the main VAT proclamation, which clearly sets that 2 million birr minimum threshold.
But the ministry must have a defense, right?
They do. An advisor, speaking anonymously in the reports, called it a practical solution. Apparently, it closes a loophole that opened up when the old turnover tax was eliminated.
The turnover tax. That was a small percentage tax on gross revenue many professionals used to pay.
Yes. When that went away, professionals earning under the 2 million birr VAT threshold suddenly weren't paying any sort of compliance tax. The ministry basically says this new directive ensures consistency across all professional services and makes administration simpler for them.
So clearly, expanding the tax base and tightening regulatory control are major government priorities right now. Okay, let's shift to finance, where foundations are being laid. Weigijin Capital Investment Bank, WCIB, one of the first private investment firms. Big news there, but they closed their first year with a loss. 10.18 million birr.
Yeah, that's the headline number, a net loss. But the chairman, Aklulu Ubet, is framing it very deliberately as an expected investment cost. Startup expenses, essentially.
Okay, but are the underlying financials healthy?
Extremely healthy by certain metrics. Their liquidity ratio is incredibly high at 88%. That's more than double the minimum required by the new Capital Market Authority, the ECMA. And their capital adequacy ratio is near 97%. They look financially very solid, very cautious perhaps.
Hold on though, 88% liquidity. In this inflationary environment we just talked about, isn't keeping that much cash, likely in time deposits, actually losing value fast? Is that discipline or maybe a costly wait-and-see approach?
That is the critical question, isn't it? It's the massive bet they're making. They absolutely recognize the inflation risk the report suggests. They estimate it could be eroding their capital by maybe 45 million per year.
Wow.
But they're gambling that the eventual opportunity of the developing capital market outweighs that erosion cost. They're positioning themselves for the long haul, for when the market hopefully takes off projections, see it growing to maybe 959 billion birr by 2028.
So they're holding fire, keeping assets liquid, investing in their own infrastructure now.
Exactly. Betting that when the ESMA mandates kick in, things like forcing companies to register shares electronically, dematerialization WCIB will be the go-to firm with the systems ready to handle it. It's a gamble that relies heavily on state-led reforms actually working and working soon.
That kind of bold positioning, looking ahead, links nicely to our final area, aviation. Ethiopian Airlines is forging a really significant partnership with Etihad Airways, global reach.
Yeah, this isn't just a simple code share. It's described as a deep joint venture. And impressively fast, Etihad CEO, Antonio Neves, mentioned it went from just an idea to launch in only 6 months.
Speed counts in that business. And the financial potential.
Etihad alone projects this alliance could unlock over $400 million in annual revenue for them alone.
So what makes the partnership work so well?
It's really a perfect example of strategic fit. Ethiopian brings its massive, reliable network across Africa. We're talking 40 countries, 60 cities, unmatched reach on the continent.
And Etihad brings?
Etihad brings premium service, strong infrastructure, and deep market access in the Middle East and Asia. Put them together, and you create this incredibly efficient travel corridor connecting continents in a way neither could do by themselves.
And it's not just passengers, right? There's a cargo angle.
A huge cargo angle. That's being called the next frontier.
Yeah.
Specifically, connecting Etihad's big Chinese cargo partner, SF Airlines, China's largest cargo operator, into African markets, using Addis Ababa as the hub.
For what kind of goods?
Think e-commerce, perishables, high-value, time-sensitive stuff. This partnership is really building a modern trade wedge. It's more than just business. You could call it aviation diplomacy, linking continents and cementing Addis Ababa's role as Africa's key aviation hub.
And both airlines are flying high right now, aren't they? Ethiopian's forecasting massive revenues.
They are. Ethiopian expects revenues around $8 billion by June 2025. This Etihad deal helps secure their global position and keeps them on track for their incredibly ambitious long-term goal. $25 billion in revenue by 2035.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive, drawing from the pages of Addis Fortune. What we've seen is an economy grappling with really immediate, quite painful volatility, tomato prices soaring, storm damage hitting key exports.
The micro-level pain.
Exactly. But at the same time, these huge, complex foundations are being laid for future growth. Sometimes causing friction, like the regulatory changes, sometimes building bridges, like the capital market launch or this huge airline alliance.
And I think the key takeaway for you, listening, is to grasp that central challenge Ethiopia faces right now. How do you pursue these big macro ambitions, the regulatory modernizations, the global partnerships, without accidentally crushing the very people and small businesses that make the economy actually function day to day?
Like the farmers facing rising costs or the small law firms hit by new VAT rules.
Precisely. If those foundations, the small producers, the service providers, crack under the pressure of maybe poorly planned or overly aggressive top-down changes, then those towering ambitions risk collapsing. It's a delicate balancing act.
It really is.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to Wigening Capital and their big bet. Keeping 88% of their assets liquid, essentially betting against inflation in the short term, all for the sake of being ready for the capital market. It leads to a final thought for you to consider.
How long can they wait?
Exactly. How much longer can Ethiopia's new financial pioneers afford to sit on that liquid capital, watching inflation potentially eat away at it, that 45 million birr annual erosion estimate, before the capital market authorities' reforms actually mature and create the opportunities they're waiting for? Feels like a race against time, doesn't it? Where inflation is the clock ticking down.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.